Good afternoon and namaste to the dignitaries, speakers, and participants. I'm really pleased to welcome you all on behalf of the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, Government of UK, Risk Inform Early Action Partnership, and International Institute for Environment and Development. Today, we are fortunate to have with us Honorable Minister Shri Giriraj Singh Ji, Union Minister for Rural Development and Ministry of Panchayati Raj. His presence is an indication of the commitments India and UK has made in tackling climate change issues. It has been exactly a year since we launched the Early Action Planning and Early Warning Tool called the Crescent tool, which was supported under FCDO's Infrastructure for Climate Resilient Growth program. FCDO is fortunate to be working with the Ministry of Rural Development in making their flagship program, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, more climate resilient. Climate information is widely viewed as critical for building resilience to evolving climate hazards and enabling adaptation to climate change, whether in the form of short-term weather forecasts, seasonal forecast, or projections for future climate change. Through our ongoing partnership with MORD, FCDO is helping improve abilities of poor and vulnerable people to cope with climate change impacts. This is primarily done to integrate climate risk management into natural resource management infrastructure built under Mahatma Gandhi NREGA. This in turn results in improving ecological services that supports livelihood of poor households. Now, research shows that only 17% of global climate and conservation funding intended for indigenous people and local communities actually reaches them. To address this very issue, CRISPM tool is designed to support a top-down and a bottom-up approach to help communities make climate-smart decisions, also enable them to absorb the effects of climate risk, adapt to climate impacts, and transform their capacities to deal with growing climate impacts. Since its launch, the CRISPM tool has been introduced in two states of India with the intention to scale it up across India. Today, we will present to you some learnings and early results from its implementation in Madhya Pradesh, which is a central India state, and show how people centered and community driven approaches can build collective understanding on climate risk and deliver climate resilience locally. Through our work in India, we hope to see meaningful inclusion of communities on the front lines of the climate crisis, especially representing small older farmers, indigenous people, and local communities, women and youth as well. Their voices are critical to identifying and investing in solutions that enhance their resilience in the face of rising challenges, tapping into existing solutions on the ground and creating inclusive and sustainable development for all. Thank you. To begin our event, I would like to welcome British High Commissioner to India, Alex Ellis, to give his address.
Namaste. I want to thank everyone participating in this event, and especially thank the presence of His Excellency Shri Giriraj Singh Ji and all of the senior officials who come together to discuss this really important subject of people and the power of tech. We're meeting together just days before COP27, where we try to take further steps to deal with the global challenge of climate change. I'm delighted the UK and India are meeting together because it's one of the areas where we cooperate the best. And we do that in lots of different ways, through programs, I'll talk a bit about that later, through research, through a lot of investment as well, both public and private. India is one of the countries of the world most affected by climate change. We've seen that, for example, through the droughts and the floods this year, which in turn have affected food security and food supply. And what happens in India affects the whole of the world because it's such an important country. Now, we came together in COP26 to look at the issue of adaptation to climate change and loss and damage. And so it's particularly appropriate we're talking about people and the power of tech today, because the Indian government is really excellent in this area. It's excellent nationally through its programs, for example, to deal with natural disasters. It's excellent internationally, for example, through the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And the UK works alongside it. And one of the best examples we have is what you're discussing today. From 2016, we've worked with the Indian government and with several states in India to improve the resilience of local communities to climate change. And we've done that through technology. through a thing called CRISP-M, which we'll be talking about, which is really a bit of tech to help people to foresee climate change and to be more resilient in the face of it. And we've done that in Madhya Pradesh, we've done that in Jharkhand, and I went to see myself in Jharkhand in a village near the Kunti district, exactly what benefits the technology can have in helping people protect their livelihoods. And some of these people are very vulnerable to the effects of climate change and extremely knowledgeable about it as well. So I'm delighted to be working with the ministry on this. I'm delighted that the minister is present to talk about this as well. And it's a good example of UK-India cooperation on technology to deal with climate change. And also, I think, reflects the ambition of Prime Minister Modi that we should, all of us, have a collective responsibility to help each individual to be able to deal with climate change through his life program. Dhanyavad.
Thank you. I would request and welcome Honorable Minister Shri Giriraj Singh Ji, Union Minister for Rural Development and Ministry of Panchayati Raj, Government of India, to deliver his keynote address. माननीय मंत्री जी, आपका स्वागत है मंच पर।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और खास करके आज देश और दुनिया से जुड़े हुए सभी लोग, और मैं अपने विभाग के सेक्रेटरी NN सिन्हा जी को धन्यवाद दूंगा कि आज पूरी दुनिया जिस पे काम कर रहा है, खास करके क्लाइमेट को लेकर के, और आज ही के दिन देश के प्रधानमंत्री ने दुनिया भर यूनाइटेड नेशन के सेक्रेटरी जनरल के साथ मिलकर के एक मिशन लाइफ को भी लॉन्च किया है। ये एक सुखद संयोग है। प्रो पीपुल प्लेनेट को नाम दिया है 3P, और हमें भी गर्व हो रहा है एक भारतवासी होने के नाते 1870 से 2019 तक जो हमारा शेयर था आज घट के 2.8 पर आया है। जो पर कैपिटा अगर हम देखते हैं तो पर कैपिटा में भारत आज केवल 1.5 टन है, जबकि औसत दुनिया का 4 टन प्रति वर्ष है। यूके का पर कैपिटा 5.5 टन है, यूएस की संख्या 16 टन और चाइना का 7.38। इसमें मनरेगा को हमने टेक्नोलॉजी के सहारे लेकर के इस तैयारी में मनरेगा का नेचुरल रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट के माध्यम से हम एक माहौल बनाने का काम ही नहीं किया है, बल्कि उस पर प्रतिबद्धता के साथ हम काम कर रहे हैं। और वो प्रतिबद्धता क्लाइमेट चेंज के लिए हम उस ढंग के माहौल को, अभी देश के अंदर में जितने हमारे जिले हैं 700 से ऊपर जिलों में, हर जिले में एक 75 अमृत सरोवर बिग पॉन्ड जो 10 मीटर डेप्थ होगा। ये बताता है कि मेरा कमिटमेंट, और कमिटमेंट ही नहीं है बल्कि इस पर प्रतिबद्धता दोहरा रहा हूं कि जो अगर COP26 में प्रधानमंत्री ने तय किए कि कार्बन उत्सर्जन 2030 तक 1 बिलियन टन की कटौती करने का लक्ष्य पूरा करने के लिए संकल्पित है। इसी में हमने क्लाइमेट रेजिलेंस के लिए मनरेगा के अंदर GIS, क्रिप्स मैनेजमेंट, जल दूत ऐप, ऐसे कई स्टेप लेने का काम किया है। अब जिसके कारण ये डेटा एक ऐसा डेटा होगा कि लोगों को भी मदद मिलेगा, और हम अपने मनरेगा के माध्यम से डिपार्टमेंट के अंदर उसमें सहयोग देने का काम करेंगे, जिसमें लोग आज चिंतित हैं। मैं इतना ही कहूंगा कि भारत सरकार के प्रधानमंत्री पूरे दुनिया में जितना इसके लिए एक्टिव है, और जब उनका आज ही जिस ऐप की बात, मिशन लाइफ कहा, आज हमें भी एक इमोशन को जोड़ना होगा। वो इमोशन केवल भाषण से नहीं होगा। मैं इस टीम में सारे सदस्यों से हाथ जोड़ करके प्रार्थना करूंगा कि जैसे PM ने कहा कि पूरे पृथ्वी के जितने लोग हैं रहने वाले 8 बिलियन जो भी हैं, सभी इसके स्टेक होल्डर हैं। ये पीपल्स पार्टिसिपेशन उनको जोड़ना, उसी तरह हम मनरेगा में अगर आज 15 करोड़ लेबर इसमें जुड़े हैं जॉब कार्ड, तो 15 करोड़ 16 करोड़ के साथ साथ समाज को 2.5 लाख पंचायत को हम उस पे काम कर रहे हैं। उसमें ग्रीन एनर्जी को ले रहे हैं, ग्रीन विलेज को ले रहे हैं। हम इसमें पूरे तन्मयता से, प्रतिबद्धता से मैं विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि मनरेगा एक ऐसा टूल बनेगा टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ। उस टेक्नोलॉजी से चाहे GSI मैप हो, इसके साथ स्ट्रक्चर करना, क्रिप्स हो, जलदूत हो, आने वाले दिनों में ये एक माइलस्टोन बनेगा और ये माइलस्टोन के माध्यम से हम दुनिया के सामने भारत में जो 1.5 बिलियन है ये पर कैपिटा, उसको घटा करके आज प्रधानमंत्री ने भी संकल्प लिया है 1 टन पर लाने का काम करेंगे। मैं सबको धन्यवाद देता हूं, जितने टीम के लोग लगे हैं उनको धन्यवाद देता हूं। और पूरे दुनिया के लोग, ब्रिटेन के एम्बेसडर वो भी इसमें दिखाई पड़े, उनकी बातों को सुना, उनकी प्रतिबद्धता को सुना। मैं सबको धन्यवाद देते हुए अपनी बातों को खत्म करता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। समय
माननीय मंत्री जी, आपके उद्बोधन के लिए सादर धन्यवाद। Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for your inspiring speech. We will now be playing a short video showcasing the impacts of People Plus Tech approach through the CRISP-M tool. Can we have the video?
मौसम के बारे में तो हम ऐसे जानते हैं, वो गर्भ आता है कि इस साल ज्यादा गर्भ आएगा तो ज्यादा पानी गिरेगा, कम गर्भ आएगा तो कम पानी गिरेगा।
लोग बागों ने फसलें बो दी तो कुछ दिन बारिश नहीं हुई, 22 या 23 दिन के आसपास, तो कुछ लोगों की फसलें सूख गई।
जॉब कार्ड बना है 2012 का है, 2010 का है, काम आया है, लेकिन गांव के लोगों को उसकी ना जानकारी नहीं मिल पाई है।
ग्रामीण क्षेत्र है, यहाँ पढ़े लिखे लोग नहीं होते, तो वे मैप और इंटरनेट पर थोड़ा सा विश्वास नहीं करते।
Agriculture in India has always relied on traditional knowledge gained over centuries and passed down through generations, which is why Indian government's National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme leverages the local understanding of the rural population to build NRM structures. Now, this traditional knowledge can be enhanced with scientific interventions. With the impacts of climate change becoming more pronounced every day, the need to combine traditional and modern knowledge is greater than ever before. The Climate Resilience Information System and Planning Tool, CRISP-M, is a mobile and web-based tool that uses Geographic Information Systems, GIS, and climate forecasting models to support climate risk-informed MGNREGS planning and implementation. The tool also provides early drought warnings to the community that helps them plan their livelihood activities. CRISP-M is enabling the local population to leverage this synergy for a chance at a better tomorrow.
पूरी पंचायत घूमने के लिए पूरी बाउंड्री घूमना पड़ेगा, पूरे एक एक गांव घूमना पड़ेगा, एक एक घर, एक एक खेत देखना पड़ेगा, लेकिन मैप के जरिए एक नजर में पूरी पंचायत अपन देख सकते हैं।
पंचायत के जो लोग हैं मोबाइल को देखते हुए वो लोग प्लानिंग भी कर सकते हैं। कौन सी मिट्टी किस जगह में कौन सी चीज के लिए काम आती है, पानी कहाँ निकलेगा, कहाँ पे हम लोग वृक्षारोपण करेंगे। हम लोगों को वो मैनेजर को और नक्शा वाले को मतलब बुलाने की और उसका इंतजार करने की एक जरूरत तो नहीं होगी उनकी, क्योंकि सारी चीजें मोबाइल में दे रहे हैं।
ग्राम सभा में जाके सभी महिला मिलके ग्राम पंचायत में आवेदन लगाया कि हमें काम चाहिए रोजगार गारंटी का, और सेक्रेटरी सरपंच को सौंपा। तालाब का काम आया। इस
CRISP-M is currently being ramped up in Madhya Pradesh and is slated to be implemented across India. The tool has the potential to secure livelihood of millions, and the signs of its impact have already started showing. Today, it is helping the marginalized understand technology better, creating aware and sensitive social groups, improvising needs-based planning, and enabling equitable distribution of benefits. By synergizing people and technology, CRISPM is all set to pave our way towards a brighter and better tomorrow.
So, a very good afternoon to all of you again. So, I'll be presenting a few learnings from the implementation of CRISPM tool and the MGNREGS. Can I have the next slide, please? But before I go on to actually explaining or sharing the lessons, I just wanted to share the sheer scale of what this program is. So, MGNREGS is world's largest public wage works-based social protection program. It guarantees 100 days of wage employment and an additional 50 days when a drought is declared. And you can just look at the sheer the scale of implementation that this program has. It reaches 250 million people on an average of about $11 billion of budget. Most of the works carried out under the program are natural resource management works, which means the works can lead to soil conservation, moisture conservation, and a range of other watershed implementation structures. Next slide, please. Now, social protection and climate change instruments typically support inclusive as well as climate resilient development. And integrating social protection policies with climate risk management approaches can yield synergistic results. So what you can see in the slide here is the analytical framework on how MGNREGS contributes to that resilience. Now, programs like NREGS, with its core social protection intervention, help poor households and community cope with both poverty and marginalization. And this being essentially done through wage employment, creation of NRM assets, strengthening of local institutions, and skill development. And with some adjustments within this program, these interventions can also help communities absorb the effect of climate risks, adapt to climate impacts, and transform their capacities and strategies to the growing climate stresses. Can I have the next slide, please? So when we undertook assessment of NREGS on how it delivers resilience, our findings showed that NREGS is already playing a significant role in building resilience to climate risks for the poorest households. And NREGS, to a large extent, have changed the livelihood capital of the communities to absorb, to adapt, and transform their capacities to manage the risks of climate change. Now, it is, if you look at the slide, you see that it's most effective in contributing to absorptive resilience, helping around 34% maintain their original structure by absorbing the impacts of climate change, because they do get wage employment and they're able to maintain their consumption pattern. But we also found that a small group of households, it acted as a stepping stone towards transformative resilience when it was delivered in convergence with other risk management instruments. So we wanted to tap into that potential. And as a result of that, the Ministry of Rural Development has initiated efforts to integrate climate information in the planning and decision-making of NREGS. Next slide, please. So you can see integration of climate information into planning and decision-making of NREGS. It can really help in deliver better climate resilience outcomes in terms of climate responsive wages and assets, which can be more compatible to the changing climate stresses and future climate hazards. So it will also help in anticipatory planning of those additional 50 days of wage employment, which is provided in case a drought is declared. Next slide, please. So the way in which we tried to tap into this potential was by developing this web and mobile-based CRISPM tool. And this CRISPM is essentially a user-friendly. The way we developed it was to have it as a user-friendly app, which allows rural households to find and share localized climate data, as well as access resources that can help protect their livelihoods when they're faced with climate risks. So the whole idea was to enable communities prepare, cope, and recover whenever they are faced with any climate crisis. It has 3 components. So it has a drought early warning system. It has a climate risk-informed planning of natural resource management assets, which is based on several layers of GIS. And on top of that, we also integrate climate information. And then there's a third component of crowdsourcing monitoring data from the community. The whole idea was to convert the crisis, such as drought or flood, and take community towards permanent drought proofing and have their livelihood and support communities to have long-term livelihood security, access to safe drinking water, water for irrigation, and so on. Next slide, please. And the way in which we planned the delivery of the tool was very much in support of a people's plus tech delivery approach. We followed a bottom-up participatory strategies facilitated through the use. So there is a web-based tool, but we also have a mobile application, which is a part of this tool, and that enables community to have access to all the information and the data and input into that planning process with the help of that with the help of that mobile application. And to enable that, we created a cadre of climate sathis. If you, in English, it would mean climate friends, who are chosen from among the community. They are trained on the use of tool and supported by block level mentors on mobilizing and conducting participatory planning at the village level. And the responsibility typically includes creating awareness within the community, mobilizing them, helping them understand the tool and how to use it. They also work with individuals and smaller groups of marginalized communities within the village. They work on building capacities of people's representatives. For example, members of the village panchayat, which also Rozgar Sahayaks, which also called mates, so that they could use this tool to support the planning, implementation, and monitoring process. And they're also using tool to help or contribute towards the social audit and create transparency and equitable sharing of benefits from the scheme. Next slide, please. So this, as Daljeet mentioned initially, this tool was launched 1 year back by Honorable Minister Giriraj Singh, along with Lord Tariq Ahmed, Minister of State for South Asian Commonwealth, FCDO. And since then, we have had this one year long learning journey. Next slide, please. And in a couple of next few slides, I'll be sharing some of the learnings that we've drawn from this tool after its launch. And this tool, since the launch, has been scaled up in Sihor and Raisen districts of Madhya Pradesh in India. And in the next phase, we do plan to scale it up at pan-India level. This tool was most recently also launched in the state of Jharkhand. And a year of this People's Plus Tech approach, we have captured some useful early learnings, trends, and the impact that can be applied as we move from these two states to a pan-India scale-up, and in case we want to scale it up in other countries. So we have launched a case study compendium today to share these emerging learnings, especially highlighting how an inclusive, volunteer-led community engagement process has enabled climate technology to work in favor of poor and marginalized. And you'll find the link of this compendium in the chat box for the participants. And in the next few slides, I'll be sharing some of the glimpses. Obviously, I'll not be able to share all of them, but some glimpses of these emerging learnings from these case studies. Next slide, please. So first is around gender and intersectionality. Now, tool really had an impact on increasing women's role in planning and decision-making under the scheme, especially because it created access to information, which made it easier for women to access information, speak in village meetings, and take charge of the agenda that matter to them. And here I'm saying this because women have traditionally been playing a very important role in both agriculture and non-farm activities, but in most of the cases, they don't get that share in the decision-making process. Next slide, please. Now, this is a quote from one of the women farmers in Madhya Pradesh, Rukmini, and you see the social process and norms take time to change, but NREGS program, supported by technology interventions like CRISPM, has definitely created that opportunity for women to break from those traditional roles. And this easy access of information through CRISPM has improved this involvement of women like Rukmini and others in the village to demand for inclusive development. Next slide, please. Now, India has a large population of indigenous communities, and they are typically called as scheduled tribe. The culture, livelihoods of many of these tribal communities are intertwined with forest, water, and land. And over the years, they've gradually got themselves alienated from the mainstream. But NREGS provides them special rights and privileges to the households from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. But for them to reap this benefit, it's important that they engage in the planning process. And this tool has enabled the vulnerable, through this participatory vulnerability assessment, it has allowed the communities from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe to prioritize their demand and ensure that their needs and aspirations are heard by others in the village planning process within this, when the planning process happens at the local level. Next slide, please. So again, this is a case study from Suresh. And by making crucial information accessible to marginalized communities like that of Suresh, CRISPM is enabling them to get equitable access to provisions of MGNREGS and have water conservation and water harvesting structures built on and near their farmlands. Next slide, please. Now, having livelihoods-based natural resource base, for example, agriculture or forestry, it creates more vulnerability for small and marginal farmers who are left with limited options to support their families when they're exposed with the risk of climate change. Now, natural resource management structures, which is created through NREGS, has the potential to create drought proofing and flood resilience, as I mentioned, but it has to be implemented on a landscape-based approach or a watershed-based approach. So towards the realization, to realize this potential, CRISPM is helping carrying out a participatory village resource planning. And this has enabled the planning process to include land development, water conservation, and harvesting efforts that are applied across whole of the village area. And that will ultimately lead to drought proofing in the long run. Next slide, please. The community is using CRISPM to effectively explore the construction of possible soil and water conservation works in the view of current as well as future climate risks by using a range of data provided by the tool, and that includes both the climate information as well as a series of GIS-based information. And this holistic approach to landscape-based planning has helped village councils, which is considered as Gram Sabhas in India, to better understand and manage the risks posed by climate change. Next slide, please. Now, we do expect, so it's just been 1 year and we have started using CRISPM in the planning process, but we do expect more impacts to emerge as these plans developed by the communities using the tool are realized, are put into action. So, but these impacts clearly highlight the value of People's Plus Tech approach. So with that, I will now invite Ben Webster, who's the head of Secretariat for Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership. And REAP, as many of you would know, was launched at the UN Climate Action Summit in September 2019. And it brings together a range of stakeholders across the climate, humanitarian, and development communities with the aim of making 1 billion people safer from disasters by 2025. So over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Ritu, and a very warm welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Ritu has summed up well why we at the Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership are so excited by the CRISPM tool, which can adapt to the MGNREGS program. So we'd love to explore further today, and we have a fantastic panel of experts joining us. So we will explore this further. We have Mr. Nagendra Nath Sinha, who is Secretary with the Ministry of Rural Development within the Government of India. We have Dr. Tom Mitchell, who is Executive Director at the International Institute for Environment and Development, or IIED. We have Mr. Kamal Kishore, who is a member at the National Disaster Management Authority in India. We have Mr. Amit Prothi, who is Director General with the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, or CDRI. We have Ms. Rajeshwari B, Commissioner, who works on the MGNREGS program in Jharkhand state. And hopefully we have Mr. Adesu Kosivi, who works with the Global Network of Civil Society Organizations for Disaster Risk Reduction, or GNDR. And Ritu, I will be sure to bring you back into the panel discussion later as we receive, hopefully, good questions from our online participants. So a very warm welcome to you all. Thanks so much for joining us today. Mr. Nagendra from the Ministry of Rural Development, I would like to give you the floor so that you can provide us with your vision of what the MGNREGS program is going to do in the future, and to provide us your opening address so that we can hear how MGNREGS can really make people more climate resilient as we go forward. The floor is yours, sir.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, as Ben mentioned to all the participants in this panel. Now, Ritu had already mentioned about the dimensions of the program, so I would like to mention other facts concerning this program, which is carrying forward the multiple objectives of not only ensuring that sustainable assets are built, that livelihoods are put on a more sustainable and resilient platform and pedestal, that the community processes are strengthened, and so multiple form of benefits are and multiple goals are strive to achieve through the implementation of the Mahatma Gandhi NREGS program. Now, NREGS program, although one would anticipate that it runs throughout the land and length and breadth of this country, and in the remotest parts of the country, it would run on a very simple platform, but the platform that this uses is among the most sophisticated of the platforms, and it uses a variety of technologies, as has been mentioned earlier. The entire operation of the program is based on the IT platform, and one need not keep a physical record other than to probably verify and cross-check. And so the platform of the entire program is a complete IT-based platform. And the data that comes out of the program is available to in the open source to the public, and anybody can access that platform. The range of benefits that it extends has been mentioned by the Honorable Minister for Rural Development from India. I would like to inform you that the landscape-based planning has been done for more than 90% of the village panchayats throughout the country. The NRM works, which constitute the majority of the works that are permissible, for example, out of the 265 different kind of works permissible within the program, the NRM works constitute 182. And if one only takes the water-related works, these are about 85 in number. So majority of works are of the NRM related. The expenditure on the NRM related works is also very high. Nowadays, this number runs into around 65 to 70% of the total expenditure. The goal in associating with a program like the CRISP M is to ensure that the climate data is also integrated with the landscape-based planning based on the geospatial inputs, the remote sensing input, so that the communities can also take them into account while planning for their works. As has been mentioned, that the planning for the Mahatma Gandhi NREGA NREGS is not a planning which is done in the offices. It's done in the village assemblies where all this data is presented to the community, and committee discusses what could be the works which advance the community's agenda for ensuring the water security, the livelihood security, the climate resilience at its best. And this is sought to be supplemented with a range of women networks present throughout the country, in all villages of the country, which help the community do this by way of preparation of a plan called Village Poverty Reduction Plan, where they draw up the livelihood plans, and these are integrated with the Gram Panchayat development plan that the community itself prepares, and these two take the issues concerning the livelihood security and the water security, etc., into account. We are also cognizant of the fact that the landscape planning by itself wouldn't be enough, but we need to take up adaptive measures also on a large scale. In that connection, I would like to mention that the ministry promotes the agroecological farming on a very large scale, and in this connection, it has organized orientation of about 18 to 19 million of women farmers who are now taking up the agroecological farming. So not only through the program, we ensure that soil conservation, moisture conservation, etc., would be achieved through the initiatives of the program, but also whatever is the resource that thereby generated or saved or mobilized or organized, that is put to best possible use. So the technology and the communities coming together are leading to better livelihood security and more climate resilience, sustainable implementation of the programs. And I would like to reiterate what our Honorable Minister mentioned, that the program has now launched. Amrit Sarovar is one of the major initiatives where we plan to have more than about 75 tanks or ponds per district across the country. We have organized the planning for Amrit Sarovar on a tech platform which takes input from the geospatial data, the remote sensing data, and finalizes the location of the Amrit Sarovars accordingly. A very recent initiative of the Jal Doodh is also a point in this regard, whereby the village community itself is being organized to take the levels of groundwater in a few of its shallow wells per village, whereby before the onset of monsoon and after the monsoon has ended, and thereby look at the variation of the groundwater table as we move across the annual rain cycle. The idea is that by having the level of water table monitored, we should be in a position to understand how these affect and what kind of measures that we could take so that the variation in the water table across the rain cycle could be minimized. So, and this leads to water budgeting, and I see an opportunity whereby the climate resilience tools or like CRISP-M based with the landscape planning based could be combined with Jal Doodh kind of application coupled with the agroecological farming. So we have to look at it not only from the perspective of one type of people plus take application, but a multiplicity of interventions which combine with each other to give us a more synergistic and sustainable impact, and look at multiple type of securities that we desire among the rural communities for ultimate goal of having livelihood security, nutrition security, water security, and climate resilience.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
end my
Nagendra.
intervention.
Thank you so much. And it's really encouraging to hear this combination being applied where we can find synergy between these different approaches. We need the tech, but we need engagement of people as well across the board, cross-sectoral approaches. And I struggle to comprehend the scale that this is working at, but it's so impressive. And perhaps we can bring in Dr. Tom Mitchell here from IIED, because IIED has been instrumental in co-developing the CRISP-M tool with partners in India. And Tom, we've already heard some of the learnings and the impact at the local level that this adaptation has been having. So please, can you share with us your reflections, Tom? What's IIED's approach been to scale up this tool? And how do you see the priorities as this tool aims to move from its pilot phase to pan-India and hopefully beyond?
Thank you, Ben, and thank you very much to everybody who's spoken so far. I think from IIED's perspective, so I'm just wanting to check whether the screen is clear. My screen has just gone black.
We can see you, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can. Okay, great. Thank you. I think just from an IIED perspective, how this really does at least appear to us as some of the best practice internationally with respect to combining social protection, social welfare tools with anticipatory approaches to strengthen climate resilience, with all of the other co-benefits and opportunities that have just been listed, where that kind of synergy can work together to create really significant opportunities for community development and for transformational resilience. And so in that regard, the kind of collaborations together with the government of India at the state level, with different scientific organizations, with the Climate Southeast approach, and with many other different actors across the kind of chain of connection systems. I think this is really excellent to show what can happen when you combine a kind of technology innovation together with climate science and a people-led approach to development. I think this is excellent. So from IIED's perspective, we've been really seeing the value in an organization like IIED acting as an intermediary and I suppose a confidence builder and catalyst to be able to connect those diverse actors together and create the type of ecosystems of organizations that are needed to achieve the type of scale that there is here and the potential. I think just in terms of the question on what is the perspective from IIED on how to scale this up and to think about what next, there are a couple of things I want to highlight. I think the first is it's very easy to get seduced by the technology, and that the technology itself is an important driver here. But fundamentally, this is about people and about creating movements for change and about growing awareness and education and empowerment. And so as we scale up, it's going to be absolutely crucial to be able to maintain a strong people-centered approach. And here what I really mean is the empowerment that the use of such a tool can bring for many diverse members of the community, and those including those that are traditionally set aside from some of the decision-making processes, to really create an empowering context where climate impacts can be better understood, the future and the kind of range of potential futures embedded within local practices, but also climate justice movements to emerge in such a way where multiple actors at the community level can work together to create a stronger, safer future. And so this people-centered approach absolutely at the core. And I think without that, you don't get the kind of iterative learning about how the technology is used. And at the moment, we've obviously heard about the connection to NREGA or NREGS, but not necessarily also to the other spin-off benefits that there might be, which could be including the development of micro and small medium enterprises, which uses the technology to support others with guidance and so on, or indeed the ability to look at reworking some of the planting patterns or the agricultural yield opportunities at a local level, where they may be needing to adopt other new technologies and other innovations and so on. So there can be that catalytic benefit, but only if we put technology in the hands of people and continue to iterate it based on the needs and experiences locally. I think one other point just to reinforce which I think is really valuable, is the acknowledgement that this is not just a tool about climate resilience, and it's not just about the anticipatory component that it can support, but also one that can actually shift behaviors and practices that others have mentioned. And so I think part of the ability to scale this is to embed it within the context of those co-benefits. And here, referring to the agroecology approaches that have been mentioned, but also the sequestration potential that comes with managing land and soil carbon at a landscape level better and with more care, that actually can really create this combined effect of resilience, of climate mitigation, and of community development at the same time. And I think being able to combine those things and look equally at the benefits flows and properly assess those are going to be crucial to also the scale up component. From IIED's part, we need to make sure that we can continue to build on and build in the right organizations and actors to ensure that this scaling can be a success. And also, from our perspective, to look at the ways in which the fabulous, I think, case example here in India can be transferred into other countries, onto other countries which haven't been as forward thinking or as integrated as the cases in Madhya Pradesh and Jharkhand, but to see the ways in which this can propagate into other contexts and actually improve the livelihoods and resilience for many tens of millions more people. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. And it would be good to come back on that point around how we roll this out in other contexts too. But before we discuss further, and please do put your questions in the chat box, participants online, if you'd like to put questions to our panelists. But let's come on to Mr. Kamal Kishore, representing the National Disaster Management Authority in India, who obviously have a key role when it comes to these acute climate-related crises. Kamal, please can you tell us, I know that the Indian NDMA has been a leader on early warning and early action, and you have to engage the communities in your work. So what have been your lessons as an agency in these areas of early warning and early action, and how do you go about engaging the community when it comes to these acute crises? Kamal, we can't hear you, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much, Ben, for that question and for the opportunity to engage in this conversation. Yes, indeed, with some weather and climate-related hazards, we've had success in reducing impacts, particularly mortality, 95 to 98% reduction in cyclone-related mortality over the last 15 years. We often talk about how our forecasts and warnings have improved, and that has led to reduction in mortality. But perhaps what we don't talk enough about is how our work at the community level has created conditions for those forecasts and early warnings to be used effectively. So there are many lessons, particularly in terms of community engagement on how to make early warning more effective in reducing losses. I will summarize those lessons in primarily 3 headings. I think the first thing is that it is very important that early warning is communicated in a manner that is understandable, actionable, and usable. And this requires that early warning is communicated in more of an impact-based manner. So in a cyclone-prone area, if you tell someone that we are expecting peak wind speeds of 165 kilometers per hour, that's accurate information, but it's not very easy to relate to. But if you turn that information into, we'll have strong winds and expect all the X percentage of, date palms to go down, houses of certain kind to lose their roofs, and so on, then it becomes a lot more actionable and relatable for communities. Once the communication of early warning has been done in an impact-based format, then you just leave local level planning to the local level. I think communities know best as to how to organize themselves at the village level, at the level of a town, to respond to that. So, but responsibility of alert generating agencies really is to translate that scientific information into something impact-based, which is specific to a context. So that's one key learning. The second thing is that it is really important to talk to communities in the design of the early warning system itself. And that means several things. First thing it means is that what is the early warning that is needed? Sometimes the early warning can be very supply driven. Let me give you an example. For example, in the monsoon months, we may be very excited about seasonal forecast of rains. But some of the farming communities, they are probably not that interested in seasonal forecast. What they want to know is what is going to happen during the season, because their risks comes not from the seasonal totals, but what happens during the season in terms of intra-seasonal oscillation or intra-seasonal variation in rainfall. So it is really important that in terms of when we develop an early warning product, it is really demand driven. It is something that communities actually want and can use, and not have, we may have a great seasonal forecast. And I'm just giving this example. This is not to say that seasonal forecast is not important, but for certain groups, they may be less interested in seasonal forecast and more in intra-seasonal. So it's really important that there's a good understanding of what communities actually want in terms of forecast products. And when I forecast and warning products, and when I say communities want, it is also very important that we do not look at communities as a monolithic, structure. There are different groups that require different kinds of information. They have different needs. So the more granularity we can have in that is the better it is. So that's the second lesson. And the third lesson I would highlight is that a lot of the times when we talk about a community-based approach to early warning, early action, we sort of assume that community-based means low tech. I think nothing could be farther from truth. Community-based does not mean low tech. It just means appropriate tech. It means making the most of technology that is prevalent, that is being used at the community level. We are often surprised, for those of us who work at the national level, how quickly communities appropriate new technology. So we must be really at the cutting edge of that. And I think that is also the promise of Crescent tool, which really takes technology, it maximizes the potential of technology and connects what communities know and what technology can bring to them in terms of timely, actionable, usable, understandable information. Just to summarize then to basically 3 lessons. The first is convert early warning into impact-based, and after that, leave local planning to the local level. The second is that talk to communities about what is their early warning needs and work backwards from there rather than have a supply-driven approach. And 3, do not think that community-based means low tech. Community-based means appropriate tech. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kamal. Really clear messages there and really helpful information as well. We would love to be able to share your experiences and your learning through the wider partnership too. But let's move on to Mr. Amit Prothi from the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which is a partnership of national governments, UN agencies and programs, multilateral development banks, private sector actors, which aims to promote the resilience of new and existing infrastructure. Amit, when promoting this objective, how much do you think technology plays a role versus this importance of engaging communities in climate and disaster risk management to support the sustainable development? And do you have any examples for us, please, Amit?
Sure. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for having me speak here. Thank you also for all of the other esteemed participants, speakers who are sharing some really interesting examples. I want to thank the UK government as well, who has been an avid supporter of CDRI from our inception stage. For all of you who may not know CDRI, we are a coalition of countries focused on promoting disaster-resilient infrastructure across the globe. Ben, your question is an interesting one because effectively there's a role for technology and there's a role for community. And I think Kamal did a really excellent job of talking through what is the appropriate kind of technology and how do you consider people in that equation. I think from our side, first of all, what can be the role of technology? Well, I think first of all, technology allows us to understand the science behind risks. So when we're talking about disaster resilient infrastructure, it starts with an understanding of risk, and often technology can help us understand that. That may be the information provided by the meteorological departments in various places that that tell you that there's a cyclone building off the coast of Odisha. So we do need technology to understand how risks are building up in certain areas that can help us plan infrastructure, for example. Technology also allows us to reach a lot of people very quickly. We are using technology in various places to connect. That same technology can also allow us to spread messages quickly. The third point really I would make is that technology also allows us to collect and process information very quickly. I'll give you an example from Jakarta. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology has a risk lab. They actually collect information of Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds to understand how a flood is evolving on the ground in real time. And then people are able to use that information to avoid certain areas because they're already finding out that those areas are flooding. So, the collection and processing of information very quickly is also something that technology helps us with. Now, importance of engaging communities in climate and disaster risk management. Well, that same example of Jakarta actually also gives you the role of the citizen in this space could also be collecting the science or helping decision makers quickly understand what's going on the ground. So that connection between what's happening and how it's reaching certain decision makers can be very, very rapid and fast because technology is allowing that and citizens can play a role there. Kamal already talked about the importance of communication. I think if you're talking about, we name cyclones for a certain reason because people have a memory that starts to associate with, okay, Hurricane Katrina happened, we have to be careful because that could lead to a disaster. So you can actually get people to change behavior by the way you're communicating information to them. How does CDRI balance these approaches? I think, first of all, it's important to recognize that infrastructure is really about providing services to people. Infrastructure is not about infrastructure itself. It's actually about either providing access to jobs, providing safety from heavy precipitation, health infrastructure that's easily accessible, or communication systems that allow us to communicate. So when we look at infrastructure at CDRI, it's actually about people. How do we improve people's lives? How do we secure people's lives through infrastructure? Another point to also recognize is just because there's an earthquake or just because there's a cyclone doesn't mean it's a disaster. It's when something fails, whether, in the case of Katrina in the US again, a levee failed and hence it became a disaster. Or if in an earthquake a building falls, it becomes a disaster. So again, the link between an event and disaster, how do you think about the role of technology and changing people's behavior, is something that we are consciously thinking about. I'll give you a real-time example here. We're doing a study in Odisha. We're looking at the power infrastructure off the coast of Odisha. We're trying to understand how secure are the power assets from cyclone winds. Now, in that study, it's not just about the assets themselves. It's also about understanding that, what is the asset serving? If there's a telecom tower or a power station somewhere, what is it serving? And while we're thinking about securing that asset from a cyclone, we're also thinking about what might happen in case that asset doesn't function during an event. And then it's about how do you secure services to people so that they are not impacted if there's failure in the asset or failure in the system. So for us, really, it's about using technology to understand risks, but also reaching out to people both from helping to define what is the kinds of services they're looking for, but also to understand, what happens during an event where we can prevent that becoming a disaster by looking at both technology and how people's behaviors could be changed. So I'll stop there. I think just on the last point about CDRI, our role is really to help build capacity, technical assistance, and channeling knowledge, which means we are really in the process of collecting good information, good knowledge from across the globe, from our member countries and others, and sharing it through our coalition. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Amit, and a really crucial role there for CDRI to play in bringing some of these key stakeholders together. So let's dive into how this works at the state level more specifically. So we have with us Ms. Rajeshwari B, Commissioner, who's working on the MGNREGS program in Jharkhand state. Ms. Rajeshwari, you're heading this huge social protection program in the state of Jharkhand. And community engagement and strengthening of village level institutions is in the very ethos of the program. So how important do you think community participation is for ensuring that the program meets its objectives, and what strategies do you employ to ensure that there is active participation and engagement at that community level?
Thank you, Ben. A very good evening to everybody, and I would like to say it's a great privilege to be a part of this discussion, and I especially thank our Secretary NN Sinha sir for his leadership and guidance in this program. It's given us a great push to go ahead with this agenda. So thank you, sir. And as has been stated, technology and community, I think participation are the key words that we are seeing here when we speak about bringing about a climate change resilient development activities. So MGNREGA in Jharkhand is playing a very instrumental role in not only building the sustainable lifestyles in rural communities, but it is also helping us build a very robust rural economy. I say this because we have a network of almost more than 60 lakh households, that is 6 million households who are having job cards for the NREGA program. And apart from this, the process that we have evolved over time is more focused on community participation. I would like to say this because the whole planning process for MGNREGA is being done through the fundamental unit of rural India, that is the Gram Sabha. These Gram Sabhas are, it's a collection of few villages. The number of villages may be varying, but it is this Gram Sabha which identifies the needs of the people, the needs of the area, and then makes an action plan of the projects that are to be undertaken for the next financial year. And this is an event that happens every year. So when we say Gram Sabha, it means all the members who are elected with a good participation range, especially the women, the elderly, and the other line departments, the frontline workers who are there of various departments to be present in these Gram Sabhas. So public participation is, I think, a key aspect of MGNREGA, and that is how we are ensuring that communities are involving in the planning process. And at the same time, our local functionaries, that is the Gram Panchayat Sarpanch or Mukhya, or the head of the Gram Panchayat, and the local functionary are also the implementing agencies of the NREGA schemes. So not only do they plan, but they also implement these schemes. So they are quite well versed with the whole system of NREGA. And in the last 2 years, Government of India and the state has been also working on this GIS-based plannings. We also have a newer program of cluster facilitation project, again another Government of India initiative, which we have just started implementing. This also speaks about GIS based planning where there is technology, there is science between the planning during the planning process, and at the same time the community involvements. So definitely MGNREGA is playing an instrumental role in bringing together the communities in the planning process, and at the same time also connecting them with technology too. But as Tom said, it's easy to get seduced by technology. So I think we have made a good foundation to how technology can be used. But whether the technology is right or wrong, I think that is something we are unable to judge immediately. So when we say something like Jharkhand is coming about, and it's the public who will be able to access it, who will be able to utilize it, make smart decisions, go for better climate resilient actions. But will the technology be applicable equally all over the place, or there will be differential kind of activities that we need to build for them? I think this is what we need to discuss more, because we are not only just having natural resource management projects or any such climate related projects, but also how can these projects bring about livelihood opportunities, as Secretary Sir was mentioning, that we need to make them livelihood secure. So how is that possible through technology? How do we correlate the situation on ground, the early warning system that will push through these messages, and then in what way can the decisions be made by our communities? This is something that we all have to keenly study, and then go about making it better, evolving it with time. I would also like to state that while our communities do understand this concept, and it would be great to see how they adjust. We know that the Indian population is quite adaptive. We saw there's always the speak of digital divide in India, where the rural is not having the access and the urban areas are having better access. But now we have seen there's a huge growth. So given an opportunity, each and every community will definitely play a very instrumental role in bringing about these changes. But at the same time, what are going to be the consequences of the decisions that we take, and what is going to be the output at a later stage, maybe 5 years down the line, 8 years down the line, because things are not going to be static, it's going to be very dynamic. What may be applicable this year may not be applicable 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line. So how do we make a system where the technology also evolves with time, and at the same time giving those opportunities to the public to have a feedback system so that their voices can be heard, and so that the changes that they want to make be accommodated in our projects. These are some of the things that I think we can work upon. And in the last workshop that was held in the state, which was an eye-opener of sorts for many of the departments, and I also was a part of that, we saw that climate change is something that is going to affect more or less every household. And Jharkhand being agrarian based, and most of the NREGA schemes being agriculture based and livelihood based, what are the technologies that we can give specifically to these vulnerable groups, and how easy is it going to be for them to adapt to that? I think these are some of the Jharkhand specific issues that we also need to address. And we are also speaking of outcome budget these days. So last, I think 2 years, we are going for outcome budget. So how can we correlate our climate resilient issues, and what are the kind of outcomes that we would like to see in the future? These are, I think, a few more areas where the state could get a better perspective from the expert and eminent persons here. Overall, I think when it comes to public participation, Jharkhand has got a very strong foundation where the communities, the elected representatives, and because they are huge, they're massive in numbers, we have a great foundation for a community-oriented change. And we have a very adaptive, sensitive communities who will definitely understand the case and play a great role in imbibing the newer methods. But at the same time, how secure is it going to be for them? How confident are we that these are the solutions that are going to work, that is going to bring about these positive changes? I think these are some of the needs also that we need to address, and hopefully in time we will be looking at a way forward that can build and instill confidence among the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajeshwari Ma'am. That's really helpful, and so much learning being accumulated at the state level. I'd like to bring in Secretary Sir at this stage to hear from a leadership perspective. Obviously, we're looking to roll out this program pan-India, and therefore other leaders in a similar position will be interested to hear your advice and your learning. So, Mr. Nagendra, Secretary Sir, what would be your advice to other leaders in a similar position? What have you learned so far, and what would be your top tips?
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the thoughts which I had expressed in earlier seminar, which was organized for Jharkhand, was that we should build in the necessary climate data into the tool for other states as well, and whatever the project can do, it should do, and it should help us build coalition and agreements with the institutions which will help us populate the requisite data for other parts and other states of the country, so that we have this kind of a tool available for the entire country. So this was one. The second one was is the fact that the planning and design of the different structures is built on certain assumptions. Now, these assumptions may not hold good if we are able to integrate and forecast the requisite climate data, and therefore we should work even in Jharkhand and revisit the design assumptions behind the structures and see if they would hold good in the cases of extreme climate events, and could we modify our design in a manner so that the structures are not washed out, they are not rendered ineffective. So this is a major initiative, major area that we should work towards even in Madhya Pradesh, in Jharkhand, and going forward in other states as well. The next thing which I feel is an important aspect of the tool, but we need some work further, is the tool of the drought early warning. Now, the way it happens now is that the states themselves declare drought, and then they come to the Ministry of Agriculture for declaration of drought, and 50 days additional works are allowed under the Mahatma Gandhi NREGS by the Rural Development Ministry. If we could validate the declaration of drought based on the inputs available under the tool, not only the process of decision making of allowing additional 50 days under Mahatma Gandhi NREGS would be quicker, but also it would be more granular. Now, under political economy considerations, many parts of the state who may not be suffering from this drought-like situation are also declared as drought affected. But if we have the granular data available from this tool and it's cross-validated, maybe it allows also to take a decision on the declaration of drought and enabling additional number of days for that part of the state which is affected by these events. I also believe that we all need to ensure that the community members, particularly the leading community members from the SHG's movement, like the women who advise the village women on the agriculture related activities or animal husbandry related activities or similar kind of community based workers? Can they be trained? Technology by itself is good, but you need translators. And if we build a cadre of climate sathi separately other than the cadres which is already available, it will be very costly exercise and it will take a lot of time. So we have to find out a way in which the existing community personnel, community cadres could be immediately sensitized towards these areas of work. They are able to understand the principles of technology behind it, and as has been mentioned, that this is a extremely easy tool. So if we are able to explain to these women who are slightly more advanced than the average community people, maybe they would be able to translate it and maybe able to enable them to use this technology further. We would also be building a lot of videos to enable the village people to use these technologies effectively. I also feel, and this was a thought I had expressed in the workshop which was held, is that we should also encourage the other departments of the government to use this tool. After all, if we have the necessary climate data available under this tool, it could very well be utilized by the people who are working out bridges for their roads, dams for storage of water and other such infrastructure. So I think it might be a good idea for people to use this climate data to look at their own structures and improve planning and implementation using this kind of a climate data. Maybe whatever structures that they already have, if we could build in some additional tools, the their resilience to these climate events, extreme climate events, could also be tested if they would hold under those events or not. It could be rain, floods, etc., drought, etc., effective, easy examples. But then also temperatures. If heat waves are there and extreme thermal stresses are there, they may have a lot of impact on the multiple kind of infrastructures that we could conceive of. So maybe whether or not these will be able to hold against those climate events is also something which could be an extension of the work that we are already doing and the FCDO has provided input for. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. So really helpful insights that I'm sure will be valuable as this tool is rolled out. But Tom, if we can take a step back for a moment, because obviously there's lots already in place in India, lots of the systems functioning effectively, but how can we roll out these approaches? How can we share the learning in some of the least developed countries and in the small island developing states that have a very different context, but would obviously benefit hugely from these kinds of approaches?
Thank you, Ben. Let me pick up a couple of very specific proposals in this sense then. So the first relates to a program that IIED has been developing together with least developed countries, of which there are 48 least developed countries, on reshaping the way we think about delivering progress on climate resilience. And this has been born out of a concern that existing climate finance structures, particularly those international structures, things like the Adaptation Fund or the Least Developed Countries Fund or the GCF, are not working for those LDCs. The money simply is not getting through. It's not sufficient. And when it does get to the local level, it's normally a very tiny fraction of what's originally been pledged. And even then it comes with conditionality and a whole variety of reasons why it can't achieve the impact that we need. And so IIED has been working to create a program called Life AR, Least Developed Countries Initiative for Effective Adaptation and Resilience, which proposes a new kind of approach to tackling this problem of vulnerability in communities, where there is a solidarity mechanism, which isn't about using existing structures, but is about creating a new structure that is based on countries, least developed countries, ensuring that 70% of the money pledged reaches the communities that need it. And that's very different from what you have now. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because one of the really key factors within that program is that those least developed countries, particularly the front runner countries, of which we're working with 6, are placing social protection schemes and climate resilience at the heart of their requests to deploy that money in ways that would support strengthening of resilience. And I think with that, there is an opportunity, of course, to adapt the type of technology and people-centered approach that there is here in what we're talking about here to some of those situations and countries that are looking to learn from this type of structure. So the mechanism is going to be there, the appetite is there, the leadership, I think, is evolving, and that the opportunity for adapting the learning from India into those contexts is very significant. One other point that I wanted to raise, where I really do see there being an opportunity, and others have voiced it today, is around the idea of understanding that adaptation and resilience is now not just about delivering projects and initiatives on the ground, but it's also an opportunity to build an adaptation and resilience economy in and of itself. And here I mean the ability to develop products and services and medium small enterprises that can start to offer growth in an adaptation economy, job opportunities, treated as one of those economic areas of the future, where it also leads to the ability for transformation locally. And so at IIED, working together with others, we've already started to build a network of places that can spot adaptation and resilience as an economic opportunity, and to build the idea of innovation clusters around that. So adaptation innovation clusters as something as a way to both scale the technology, but to embed a future adaptation economy can be one where we can see some of those multiple co-benefits scale. And that's just as much for LDCs and for SIDS as it is for countries like India or for Scotland, where they're taking this opportunity very seriously, but something where there can be a genuine global network of appropriate technologies, as Kamal said, that can be appropriated at the community level, but develop the jobs of the future that we're now going to need, as well as the impacts.
Thanks, Tom, and great to hear learning coming in from climate kick programs as well, I'm sure. But Kamal, we're running out of time, but I would love to hear, with this issue of finance, obviously many governments are under pressure, and these social protection schemes need to find different ways to allocate resources to the most vulnerable people in times of crisis. Any learning from the Indian perspective on how we can draw on private sector, insurance mechanisms, disaster risk financing, any insights that you're able to share before we have to let participants go today? I can't hear you, Kamal, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ben, for that question. So in addition to resources available through MGNREGA and other insurance schemes, in India, we have completely restructured and reformed the way the financing for disaster risk management works. So it's been a year that new system is in place, and there are, for all our states, there is predictable financing for all the disaster risk management functions, for disaster risk mitigation, for immediate response, for reconstruction and recovery over the long term, as well as preparedness and capacity development. Now, the key challenge is, of course, the money is never enough. But the key challenge is, how do we make sure that these various sources of financing come together in a coherent and appropriately sequenced manner at the level of a household or a community. I think that is the bigger challenge. Now, the role, the promise of CRISP-M could be if we could use that kind of tool to deploy some of these financing. For example, in our state disaster response funds, which is assured amount of money over a period of 5 years, how can we deploy it in a more anticipatory way for preparedness and capacity development before major events occur? Likewise, there are resources now available to 12 of our most drought-prone states, not only for drought response, but for doing drought risk management planning. Significant amounts of resources just for planning before the event, and planning at the state level, district level, and down to the community level. So if we can use these resources in a manner that employs good science, prediction capabilities, and then making that available at the local level so that these resources can be used for effective planning, for effective response. So essentially, I'm saying two things. One is there are several windows of financing which could be deployed at the local level. The real challenge is convergence and correct sequencing to have the maximum collective impact at the household and community level. And the second is that we have to use predictive capabilities, that we have to deploy some of this financing in a proactive, anticipatory manner. The whole notion of forecasting-based financing has gained a lot of traction, but we really have to make it work at the community and household levels. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much, Kamal. I would love to ask you all many more questions today, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. And I do want to introduce Mr. Shantanu Mitra, who works with the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office in India as the head of infrastructure and urban development. So Shan, what have you heard today, and how will FCDO be able to take this work forward?
Thanks very much, Ben. Well, it's been fascinating to hear what we've heard from such a rich panel of experts, and apart from the knowledge that's been shared by people like Tom Mitchell and Kamal and Amit, just to hear from our government counterparts, the Secretary and Ms. Rajeshwari, Commissioner from Jharkhand, who I was pleased to meet when I was there a few months ago, is just how enthusiastic and active the government is in picking this up and scaling it up and providing it with support. I mean, as a partner, that's exactly what we always look for, and this is certainly something which is being led and rolled out by government, and it's just very gratifying as a partner to see something which is actually quite a small investment taking off in a way which has the promise, and I should say the promise, it's not there yet, but to really have an impact on such a vast scale. So I think what we've heard up to now, I mean, everyone would understand and acknowledge, that adaptation is a local issue, as we've heard. It really does call for participatory development. And what we've heard today is that the potential of technology as an enabler for that participatory development to take place appears to be very, very promising. The evidence that FCDO has, that analytical evidence from across the world has suggested that social protection is a very powerful, cost-effective form of adaptation. But I think one of the learnings I would pick up is that it's not only, if you look at NREGS, the way in which social protection provides resilience is not just through providing a safety net at times of crisis, droughts, floods, and so on, but if you can actually integrate climate information and early warning into the social protection program, it can actually build long-term resilience so that future events have a less of an impact through building preparedness, community awareness and information, and building assets at the local level. I was struck by, I was remember the release of the Global Commission on Adaptation's report a couple of years ago, which really framed the adaptation challenge around three issues: the need for a revolution in understanding, a revolution in planning, and a revolution in finance. And what I would say is that the combination of CRISP-M and NREGS really brings together these three elements. As we've heard, it puts information and capacity in the hands of communities to have the information and the understanding they need. That's then linked to the planning process, as we heard from the Commissioner, through Gram Sabhas, so local planning. And thirdly, because it's part of a program with such large resources behind it, the resources then follow. So I think it's at early stages, as we've heard. I agree. I think the point Tom Mitchell made, that it will be important to properly assess in a rigorous way the benefit flows prior to scaling up. What we've heard so far is very promising, but I think it is necessary to do that deeper work. Just turning then to scaling up, I think there's two issues. One is, how can this be scaled up within India? And secondly, how can it be disseminated globally? Within India, clearly, this is a large scale program in itself, which may have additional budgetary resources behind it in future. So the scale up, first and foremost, comes through the allocation and the integration into the NREGS budget. Secondly, I was very interested and very much agree with the point the Secretary made about the scope for CRISP-M to be taken up by other ministries and schemes. I really do think if this is well analysed and evaluated, it should feed into the government's national adaptation planning process, which I understand will be taken forward next year, and to present NREGS as a powerful, large-scale resilience and adaptation tool. And I think the national adaptation plan would be, again, a way in which scaling up could take place. Just in terms of taking the experiences outside of India, just to add a few thoughts. I mean, Government of India now is playing such a positive role in promoting climate action internationally. CDRI, of which we're a member, is a very good example of that. But the Government of India's own international cooperation and India's tech capacity, I think, have a lot of potential to act as a mechanism to take this elsewhere. I think the REAP platform itself it has a lot of potential. Our partnership, the UK's bilateral partnership with India, has partnership on global development as a key part of that. So working with India to take Indian innovations to other developing countries. So I certainly think we're working with the Ministry of External Affairs on that. I certainly think we should bring CRISP-M into that conversation. I would also add the role of multilaterals. So an example there is, the UK, we're working with the Asian Development Bank on a new community resilience partnership program, which is looking at integrating climate resilience through community development programs and social protection in other countries across Asia. Many countries have large-scale community-driven development programs. They're not all the same as NREGS, but again, offer a lot of scope to introduce risk information and early action at scale. So I think taking those lessons through this new ADB platform would be something worth looking at. And I'm aware that IIED is also a partner in that initiative. And I would also say the CDRI itself. I mean, we've heard from Amit Prothi, who we work very closely with, and CDRI has a lot of potential to take these kind of approaches to small island developing states and other countries. So I think there's a lot of openings there to explore. So we're just to close. I mean, we're really delighted and happy to see the way that this has developed. I think we'll continue to work both with the Ministry of Rural Development and to work with the Government of India and IIED to explore how these experiences can be taken more broadly outside India. So let me stop there and hand back to you, Ben.
Thanks so much, Shan. Really helpful to hear how FCDO are going to be championing this and really moving it forward. Thank you to all of our participants on the panel today. Thank you for joining as participants. Daljeet, let me hand over to you to wrap up the session today. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Ben, and I'll add my thank yous to everyone for participating in this event. But सबसे पहले बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे माननीय मंत्री जी का जो यहाँ आए आज. Thank you to the Honorable Minister for gracing today's event with his presence. I really thank Mr. Sinha, Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, for his guidance throughout and his insights today. Thank you to Ben for moderating the session so well and so smoothly. To all our panelists, Dr. Tom Mitchell, Mr. Kamal, Kishore, Mr. Amit Prothi, Ms. Rajeshwari, thank you for your insights and your valuable inputs today. We will be summarizing this discussion and sharing with everybody. I would also like to thank Ritu for presenting the early results and doing the hard work on the implementation of CRISPM in the last 1 year with her team and with our extended partners with FIA and UNDP as well. A big thank you to all the officials at the Ministry of Rural Development, especially the Joint Secretary, Mr. Kataria and Mr. Dharamveer Jha, for their support and guidance throughout this work and for putting together this event as well. And last but not the least, thank you to all the participants and the audience for today's session. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.